We wanted to ask you all, and no pressure, and it's okay if you say, oh, we haven't gotten to it yet. But we just wanted to check in. Last time we met, we talked about the BREAT, the family covenant, and rethinking, some of our roles, responsibilities, and parent-child relationship around the house and in life. And we just wanted to check in and see if anyone had gotten to talk about that at all, or done even some thinking about it. And if so, what if you would want to share something from that? I think it would help everybody as we think about that assignment. So feel free to jump in if it's come up yet in conversation.
If you're brave enough to be the first to jump in.
Be the Nachshon. You could also say, oh, we haven't gotten to it yet, and that's okay too. We're just sort of curious. All right. Well, maybe that means, I bet some of you have started thinking about, oh, Rachel Goldberg, you're going to say something?
I was going to say we haven't even started.
Okay.
Sorry, but at least I figured we'll fess up here. Just haven't gotten there yet. And my mind is still kind of all over the place in terms of what is even happening in my coming year. So
right.
So I have a lot to think about.
Thank you, Rachel. And I assume that's most of us here this morning. There's so much on your plates right now, let alone, of course, the other aspects of the B'nai Mitzvah preparation. So that's fine. There is no deadline for it. It's more of an ongoing conversation that we hope you'll have, in general. So that's absolutely fine. And thanks for speaking. Wonderful. That's great.
We also just wanted to check in with all of you. We began last session by talking about proposal for increased attendance of extended family in the sanctuary for B'nai Mitzvah. And it's odd to now reflect on that when that was only a couple of weeks ago. But we are aware and cognizant of the fact that the country is in a very different place with this pandemic weeks later, arguably a much worse place than we were in the spring even. But we still believe that we have been thorough in this plan, that our reopening task force has really gone through it to figure out how we can make sure that there's a group in our sanctuary as safely as possible. That's the very long-winded way of saying that with each family, rather than assuming a policy is something or is not something, when you speak to Rabbi Marder, speak to me directly, we'll be able to give you more guidance on what that looks like, because it could look different in December than it does in January, than it does in February. We really understand that this policy will be constantly moving and reflective of what is going on in the world. That is true for our in-person prayer experiences as a community as a whole. And so to sort of keep that in mind as we meet with you and as we meet with your child, to really reflect on what the service for your child's B'nai Mitzvah can and may look like. That's part of the conversation that we'll have, and that's obviously an ever-changing and evolving part of the conversation. So what we really wanted to focus on today is the idea of names. That when you receive your Hebrew name, be it at a Brit Milah or a Simchat Bat, but when that is when we celebrate you entering the covenant of the Jewish people. And when you become B'nai Mitzvah, what you're actually doing is you're taking that next step in that covenant. That when you receive your name, that is your parents' job, your parents' role in celebrating you in the covenant. And when you become bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah, that's you taking on your role in this covenant. And so we wanted to begin really talking about 3 stages today. The stage that parent plays in this journey, the role that community plays in this journey, and the role that each of you as B'nai Mitzvah will play in this journey as well. So I'm going to begin by sharing my screen with the Kriyat Shem. This is the blessing that is said. This is specifically, since the text is a little altered for boys and girls, this is a text used at a baby naming for girls, a Simchat Bat. This actually comes from, you'll see that it has my name on it because this actually comes from the pamphlets that we used when Kayla, who is now 10 years old, had her baby naming when we were still living in New York City. So I'm going to pull that up because I want us to look at the text together and really explore exactly what this text means. All right, can everybody see that? Can I just get a thumbs up if you can see it? All right, so we're going to, for our sake, skip to the English. And what we're going to do, I would love a volunteer. And you know what, even better, I'm going to call on a volunteer. How about Mara Suskauer? Can I volunteer you, please, to read for us where it says daughter of Jesse and Andrea Olitzky? You could ignore that. You could even add in if you want. You could say Mara and David Suskauer. You could leave it blank because this is really the blessing that each of us have for our children as we brought them into the covenant, the Jewish people, as young children. Will you unmute and read aloud for us?
All right, that's what I get. All right, no problem. My pleasure. Good morning. Okay. Our God and God of our ancestors, sustain this child. Let her be known among the people of Israel as Maya Amit, daughter of Mara and David Suskauer. May her mother be blessed with renewed strength, and may both parents find joy in their child, as it is written, it was this child I prayed for, and Adonai has granted me what I have sought. Fulfill for her, Adonai our God, that which is written. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and the Torah of loving kindness is upon her tongue. Keep going.
Yeah, please.
Okay. Let us give thanks to Adonai, for Adonai is good. God's loving kindness is forever. May this child, Maya Amit, grow into greatness. May the Holy One, blessed be God, protect and sustain her and bless her with joy like Miriam, with loyalty like Ruth, with leadership like Deborah, with equality like the daughters of Zephilhad, with discernment like Rebecca, with love like Rachel, with integrity like Tamar, with courage like Esther, with faith like Hannah, and bring her success and blessing in all that she does. May her parents be privileged to raise her to maturity. May she enjoy the blessings of Torah, chuppah, and good deeds. May she find favor in the eyes of God and all humanity. And let us say, Amen.
Amen. Thanks, Mara, for letting me put you on the spot and
No
volunteer
problem.
you. So a couple of things I want us to explore and open up the conversation. First, this is an alternative text that Rabbi Julia Andelman wrote based on the traditional text, which I really love. And it adds in the role of biblical matriarchs to this blessing and how there are certain qualities that we want our children to have when they're first brought into this world, right? I want all of you to think back to when your children were babies and when they had their full lives ahead of them and you had no idea what their personalities would be, right? All you knew was that, we're going to embarrass all of you, right? All you knew is that they slept, ate, and pooped. And that's all that we knew. And these are our dreams and visions for what they would become. And part of that blessing is this vision that they would have joy and loyalty and leadership and love and integrity and courage and faith and all these things. But these blessings at a bris and at a simchat bat end with this idea. We say these same blessings again, actually, these same words when you stand on the bima when your child becomes B'nai Mitzvah, that l'galo l'torah l'chuppah u'ma'asim tovim, that your child should grow up to enjoy the blessings of Torah, of chuppah, and we're going to explain what each of these really means, and of good deeds. And so what does it mean that we want to build a journey, build a path for our child that is full of Torah, chuppah, and good deeds. Feel free to unmute if you like, or maybe we'll volunteer you again and put you on the spot. You can also add in the chat function.
To throw out one idea about at least chuppah, I always think of chuppah. Of course, chuppah is the wedding sort of canopy that's traditional to have at a Jewish wedding. But when I see that in the list, I think of meaningful relationships in life. So whether that's deep friendships, romantic relationships down the road, but a life full of relationships that are meaningful and healthy. And so, yeah, the question is, how do we create opportunities for that, for relationship with Torah, for modeling relationships or teaching that, and then of course good deeds, masim tovim. That's sort of the Jewish measure of a good life, it seems, of a parent's task.
We see Jason and James wrote, model the right behaviors, give them the tools they need to be good humans. What else? Other thoughts? You can feel free to unmute or add in the chat function. And really to understand what is the difference between each of these, right? There are these three specific tasks. One is Torah, which we explored a little bit last time when we talked about these three pillars of Torah, Avodah, and Gemilut Chasadim. But what does it mean to live a life, to grow up in a life of Torah here specifically? Meaningful relationships, as Rabbi Marder said, and good deeds. We have Claire and Andrew wrote, learning meaningful relationships and kindness, both giving and receiving.
What can I just speak? I wanted to say what I meant by learning was the Torah. So study, learning, education.
Absolutely. And understanding, I would add to that learning is a lifelong journey. Ari, if I could embarrass you for a second, Ari Lebo's father was one of my teachers, and he told me that when he was celebrating the 30th anniversary of his rabbinate, he woke up that morning and realized how much he did not know and started to cry. And that was a deeply humbling experience for me as a brand new rabbi, because it helped me understand, and I hope it helps all of us understand, that we never know everything that we need to know. I'm not just talking about Torah, I'm talking about life. That even experts in their fields, those of us who are experts in our fields, we constantly have to do continuing education to keep up our licenses, to keep up our degrees. And it's an understanding that we're constantly learning. Learning success means overcoming fears of having difficult conversations as kids get older. Learning for parents as well. I like that a lot, Ralph. I don't know if you wrote that or Hannah wrote that. But I think that's really powerful, that as parents, right, we say this when our children are babies, that we have to learn what it means to raise them as well. And that's a journey unto itself. Kindness, kindness, kindness. Sandy wrote, model it for our children and make sure to point out when you see your child being kind. Positive reinforcement as well. How do we teach our children, going back to what Rabbi Marder suggested, this journey of meaningful relationships? How do we introduce our children to what that is and what that looks like? Talk openly about what a healthy friendship and relationship looks like.
When I just typed that, to say one word about it, I used to work for an organization called Shalom Bait, which means peace in the home. It's an organization in the Bay Area, and they work to combat unhealthy or abusive relationships in the Jewish community. And I was a community educator after college, and would do a lot of presentations for teenagers for groups in synagogues. And we often would draw on the concepts of B'Tselem Elohim, of the fact that we're each created in God's image, to talk about how we each should treat each other with the same dignity and respect that you would, afford God. That's how we treat each other. And we would, talk about, what was important to us in friendships, in relationships, what looks healthy, when do things cross lines, and when do they lift us up and build us up and make us feel good. So that's sort of what I meant, was talking about having those conversations. Great.
Risa adds, by modeling, right, that we set examples for our children. Michelle reminds us to not take life too seriously. That, right, I don't know, Michelle, if you wrote that, or David wrote that, or Eli wrote that, but that we remember that we enjoy the small and large moments that we find joy in life's journey. Joseph wrote it important that we vet their friends, that this is, right, the most challenging part of parenthood is, as a child, and we're going to get to this in a second, as our children become their own human beings, and we realize that's really what this B'nai Mitzvah process is about, that we take a step back and they take a step forward, that we understand that our role in their lives is now more in the background, and how do we guide them in the decisions that they make, right, wrong, or otherwise, and how do we help those decisions? We share the impact on others when people are treated poorly. We help them see what happens when we aren't kind. Lastly, I would just say, before we look at another text, I want to explore, we talked about this last time, one of the 3 pillars, again, from the last conversation, was Gimilut Chasadim, acts of loving kindness. And here again, we're told that we want to raise our children up. We said this when they were babies, that we want to raise them up the life of Ma'asim Tovim, of good deeds. So why is the concept of this life of doing good so integral to what we want to teach our children, or at least liturgically what we want to teach our children? Any thoughts? You can feel free to unmute or add in the chat function. Or while you're muted, I would invite you to ask your child that question.
Well, Rabbi, for their own good and for the good of the community.
Right, for their own good. Thank you, Jeremy, and the good of the community. That being good and kind, as Jason James wrote, can be just as infectious as being unkind. What's so interesting is that we also understand that goodness, as much as we don't want it to be the case, but it especially feels this way right now, is often subjective, right? That we have our own ideas of what the right thing is, of what we want our children to stand up for, the lives we want our children to live, and the people that we want them to become. And yet, somebody who has an idea, who has a worldview that may be antithetical to yours, believes that they're raising their children up to do good and to do what is right as well, and their idea of what is right is the polar opposite of your idea of what is right. So I believe it's not just teaching our children how to live a life of good deeds, but it's also discerning between right and wrong, and understanding, as we talked a little bit about last time, that when we talk about what is good, what is right, and what is truth, that's ultimately subjective. And part of this journey is that up until this point, we have taught our children what our truths are and try to cultivate them with a life full of those truths. But we understand, as we take a step back, they're now going to figure out their own truths. and their own understanding of this world. And we may wrestle with the idea that sometimes their truths may be different than ours. The decisions that they make may be different than ours. And how do we continue to teach them and inspire them in those truths? And how do we understand that we need to respect when they figure out things and when they come to terms that may be different than ours? Not a rejection of what we've taught them, but really a celebration of the bearings and support that we've created for our children that have allowed them to make decisions for themselves. Why don't we jump to the next text? I'll share my screen and then turn over to Rabbi Marder, a text from Midrash Tanhuma.
Thanks, Rabbi O. So in this theme of names, we said that at a baby naming, when you each receive your name, or whenever you received your name, maybe after you were already a little bit older, we give you a Hebrew name and hope that you will carry that name through your life. And as your parents continue to raise you, that you will come to a meaningful relationship to Torah study and to good deeds. But we want to explore a little bit what it means to have a name. A name is a really powerful thing in Judaism. There's a famous phrase in Tanakh that says, Kishmo Kenhu, that just as his or her name, so too they are. Meaning that we often manifest the qualities of our name. So our name really helps mold us and shape us, whether we realize it or not. But the power of a name is a big thing in Jewish tradition. So one text exploring that is this passage from the Midrash. Midrash is story explanation of Tanakh, of the Bible, and this Midrash is on a certain section of the Torah where we're talking about names. So there are 3 names the sages teach by which a person is called in your life. 3 names, let's say. One which your parents call you, that's the name they gave you, your English name, your Hebrew name, or both. One which other people will call you. That might be, let's say, a nickname, or you might have nicknames that friends call you, or names that other family members will call you. And the last one, which is really, really central, I think, to what we're talking about today, and that's the name that you earn for yourself, the name that you make for yourself. The last one is the best one of all. So, Rabbi, if you stop screen share, I want to ask everyone to think about that. What does it mean to make a name for yourself when you hear that? And I want to think of the B'nai Mitzvah students first. When you hear that phrase, what does it mean to make a name for yourself in this world? What comes to mind? And you can type it, you can unmute. Really interested in your thoughts. I see the Boyarskis are chatting, that's excellent. Yeah, what does it mean to make a name? Nathaniel Gold, do you have an idea? You look like you have an idea.
To find something that represents you.
Find something that represents you. So how you want to be known, like what you want your reputation to be. Do I want to be known for being kind? Do I want to be known for my generosity? What's the reputation you want in the world? And how do my deeds reinforce that? Great. Anyone else? What does it mean to make a name for yourself? And I'll add another element to that. If maybe this will make it even easier to answer. What do you want your name to be? How do you want to be known? That's maybe an even bigger question. How do you want to be known by? And parents, you can also answer. One example from Torah to get us started also is that when God tells Abraham, the first Jew, he says, Lech lecha, go forth, and I'll lead you to, a land, the land that I will show you. I will make your name great. You will be, the parent of this new people. That's us. But God says, I will make your name great. meaning people are going to know about you. You're going to be, let's say, famous, but for something good. God says, Heyeh bracha, be a blessing. Wherever you go, be a blessing, spread goodness, spread love. That's your mission. That's the mission for all of us, is to be a blessing. And for that, our name will be great or big. It'll be well known. That's what we want to be known as Jews. Great. Isaac says, to have a word that shows what kind of a person you are. Yes. Right. Very good, Isaac. Right. So it's about how you're known both inside and outside the community. That's right. Are we known for welcoming the stranger, for welcoming immigrants, refugees, for example? Is that how we want it? Is that how we're known as a Jewish people, as a Jewish community, that we take a stand on that issue, for example? I do think that Jews have that reputation outside this community, but it's both in and out. Very good.
It's making me think about, this is Native American Heritage Month, and so we've been looking at children's stories that come from Native American history, and it's always really interesting that so many of them end with a name change. There's the morals of the story involve a character who starts in one place and evolves as a character, so that at the end of the story they take on a new name. And so it's making me think about that, and it's thinking about, when you talk about people that you work with, a lot of times you'll get then a description of them, like oh, they are such a good person, or they're so kind, or so it's almost like, what adjectives do you want to be your name too? That's what as you're talking, I'm thinking about.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. And, we have that example in the Torah as well. Can you think of any characters who got a name change at some point?
Sarah and Abraham.
Right. They were Sarai and Avram, and they each got a Hey added to their names to be Avraham, Sarah. Hey represents God. So there was now godliness in their name. Jacob, right? Yaakov, he becomes what? What is Yaakov's new name after he wrestles with that mysterious angel one night? Israel. He becomes Yisrael, one who wrestles with God and with humanity and prevails and triumphs. He becomes a wrestler. And that becomes, we also get that name change. Now we are B'nai Yisrael, the children of Israel. We are also wrestlers with God. So that's also our name. That's what it means to be a Jew, is to be one who asks questions, is constantly wrestling with tradition, with God, with people. Yes, so that's our name too. We got a name change. So I invite you to think about the name that you were given, the name that people call you by, and the name that you are now making for yourself as a up and coming, soon to be Jewish adult in the eyes of this community, and the name you want to be known by. How do you behave, represent yourself? How do you speak? All of this helps create a name for yourself, a reputation for you, for your family, for our people, really. We all, are representative. Not to say that you, wherever you go, you have to always think about that. But I would say that it is always good to be cognizant of the name we are making and how people are knowing us. So that as you go out into the world, you can, have that awareness and that consciousness. So think about all of your different names. And as you become B'nai Mitzvah, you'll be taking on a new name, perhaps.
And maybe this is a good transition. We don't want to put more homework on your plates. And so maybe we'll spend some time actually doing this activity now. I would say first, with the name that you were given, to spend this time, I'm going to share my screen one more time, but I'm also going to put in the chat function, I hope this works, a link to a form for you to fill out together. This idea of your three names that you were, right? The name that you were given, the name that people call you, and the name that you make for yourself. The name that you were given first, at least in Ashkenazi Jewish tradition, we name after those who have passed away, those who are no longer living. And it's an acknowledgement, both with our names and with this covenant, that we stand on the shoulders of those who have come before us. Right? We stand on the shoulders of so many. We often give a name to our children in memory of somebody who's no longer living, so that that person lives on. But also because we want them, we want all of you to carry the qualities of them. As Rabbi Marder mentioned in the chat function, the Sephardic tradition that we name after somebody who is living, because we want to make sure that those who are living, that their characteristics can influence our children while they're still living. But I want us to take a moment. I'm going to share my screen again with the link that I just shared in the chat function for us to all see briefly. To explore with your child for a moment these three categories. You can click on the link in the chat function. Discuss with them what they were named. Either it could be their English name, their Hebrew name they were given, and why. Maybe who they were named after. Maybe that name meant something beautiful to you. Maybe it had special significance. Why you gave your child the name you gave them, and spend some time talking that through. What does it mean that people call me? Maybe you have a nickname that people call you, and why is that nickname that people call you? And then finally, this is really something for our B'nai Mitzvah to focus on specifically, this third part, the name that you want to make for yourself. Who will you become? How will you be remembered? And why? And then ultimately, you're going to sign your name, or bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah, you're going to sign your name to this document, that this is the name you were given, the name people call you, and then your commitments to the name you want others to call you, the name you want to make for yourself in this world. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen. You can click on the link in the chat function and have this conversation together.
You can copy and paste it. That may work for others. And when you sign it, feel free to sign your Hebrew name and your English name, or one or the other is okay too, but it's just another opportunity to practice writing all your names. And if anybody doesn't have a Hebrew name, by the way, feel free to reach out to Rabbi O or to me, and we'd love to help you find one if that's something you are exploring.
So feel free to spend a few minutes discussing this together, parents and B'nai Mitzvah together, and then we're going to come back together to share all three parts of this. And I would just add, I think what's really important to remember that third part for our B'nai Mitzvah, both the name that your parents have given you is based on, right, their aspirations for you in your first days of your life. And even the name that people call you, whether it's a nickname, how you're known, whatever, may reflect your behavior, your relationship with them. But that is, again, a name that you're given by somebody else. That third name, that name that you make for yourself in the world, as Midrash Tanchuma said, as Rabbi Marder read, is the most important of all. That's the name based on how you view yourself and how you want others to view you in this world. That's the ongoing process that you are on, that each of us are on, in which we strive to express our true selves and the best version of ourselves. To really spend time as you prepare to become B'nai Mitzvah, focusing on that third part. See a lot of conversations. We'll wait just one more minute or so, and then we're going to put some of you on the spot to share.
Okay. So did anyone learn a little bit about their given name, why they were named what they were named, and what their parents maybe hoped for them by giving them that name?
Feel free to unmute and share.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we may volunteer you.
I see the Richmonds maybe have something to share. Nice. Simon means he will listen. That's right. Shimon, like the Shema. Steve, was there, can you tell us more about how you and Leah picked that name for Simon? Or Simon, do you want to share? That's also a lesson there in compromise, consensus, and how we make decisions.
I think Eli has a share whenever.
Great, Eli, please.
I was named after my bubby. My buddy. Well, her buddy, but like
Your super bubby.
Your super bubby, yeah. What was her name?
Esther. So it was like E. And also she lived to 100.
Wow. So may you too have a long life.
And Michelle, if we could put you on the spot, what were the qualities about your bubby that you wanted Eli to carry with him?
Well, I told him that she was the most loving, caring person that in the entire family. She always looked out for everyone. She would call me until she was in her 90s every week to talk to me about what was going on. She knew exactly what was happening in my life. And she just had such an energy. My grandfather died in his early 80s, and we all thought that was it. And then she became like the force of the family, and even more present. And like as she got older, she was just a really amazing person. So like I love that whenever I think of Eli, I think of her, and it reminds me of the good times we had together. And she made great kashavanishka.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, anyone else want to share a little about their name? So Simon, you too will be a Nobel Prize winner. Just you wait. Isaac.
So I was named Isaac because it means laughter in Hebrew, I'm pretty sure. Mm-hmm. And the name Isaac is an important one in the Torah. So people call me Isaac because it's my name, and like I like to be called that, except my sister.
Does she have a nickname for you?
She calls me whatever. Like sometimes it's carrot cake or whatever. And I would like my name, like my earned name, to be Isaac, because I would like my life to be filled with laughter and joy.
Beautiful. It's a worthy endeavor. Yes, may you have a life of laughter, just like Yitzchak. That's right, tzchok, laughter.
I see Sandy Fine, not to put you on the spot, but I see that Tyler is commenting on the the document, which is great. Does he want to share anything, or do you want to share anything with the group?
I'll share for him because he's still in his pajamas and hair. He was named after his maternal grandmother, and she was very special to me, and he's very special to me. But we were just starting to talk about how when I asked my rabbi, we were trying to come up with a Hebrew name. I knew I wanted to name him after my grandmother. Her name was Deborah, and we found out that Tyler in Hebrew means someone who tiles, and it didn't really have the connection. So the rabbi said to me, "It's okay. He can go by Daniel. That can be his Hebrew name. You don't have to necessarily use his first name." And so Darren and I stuck with Daniel because not only was it an honor to my grandmother, but also just it had so much more meaning than someone who tiles, because Tyler is so much more than that.
Wonderful. And Danielle is a beautiful name. Has to do with also being a good judge, a Don, the word for dean, right? Now, anyone want to share a nickname that you have? What's a name that people call you? And maybe, we'll get a little bit of backstory, share, briefly. Why is that a nickname for you? So who has a nickname they can share with us? Yes, LeBose, I see you. There we go.
My nickname in my family is Cakes because my sister used to call me, what is it, KK?
Yeah, when she was little.
When she was little.
Yeah, and then
it turned into Cakes.
Yeah, and then my dad started calling me Cakes.
For what it's worth, that's also the nickname of Hall of Fame pitcher Jim Palmer. So,
oh, nice.
You have a future, Caleb.
So what's also nice about that nickname is it reminds you, of childhood and growing up together, and I hope has a positive association when you were little. Great. Anyone else have a nickname?
In my family, I'm called Nene, and I got the name from my preschool caregiver.
Had a little song that went. I was being muted. The song would go, "Get up and dance, Nene," and little, 6-month-old Nathaniel would get up and do a little shake, or 12-month-old, however old he was, and it stuck.
Very sweet. That was even before that song. Watch you, Nene. Very sweet. Reminds you of the dance, of also being little. Yeah. Maybe one more person. Any nickname? Shayad?
My siblings call me Yaya because they couldn't pronounce my name when they were little.
SH, right. So that also, reminds you, of childhood and relationship with your siblings.
Mm.
Very sweet. And yes, Helena, were you going to say something? Please. What's a nickname you have?
I'm called Helena Bena, just because it's easy. I don't know.
There's a little rhyme there. Yep. So when I hear that, I hear that you're fun, and there's a, that's a.
I was trying to say something.
She's talking.
Yeah, I was going to say that's like a fun nickname. When I hear that, I think of you as being like fun and easygoing. Helena, you said, say it again. It's embarrassing.
Helena Bena.
Helena Bena. Great. Love that.
Although, Helena, my kids are still very confused because you were called a very different name on Sesame Street. And they were like, that's not her name. Her name's Helena.
That's right. She was Jacqueline.
So known by a fourth name. Any last nicknames to share? If not, we'll just move to our last question quickly, which is if anyone wants to share the name they want to be known by. And that can be one quality that you want to have in your life, maybe being honest, loyal, something that you are thinking about, that you're working on, maybe a goal, or it can be an actual name and say, just like Isaac said, that you want to be known and have joy and laughter in your life. And so to have that name of Isaac. So anyone want to share for that last name?
And this is really the hardest when you're 12 or 13 years old, to think about what you want your legacy to be, what you want to be remembered, because you have so much of your life ahead of you still. But that's really what this is. This is, when we look back 100 years from now, how will you be remembered?
Nice. Caleb says a mensch. Beautiful. And for listening, really living that name, and I love that, right? Shema, helpful. Wonderful.
Be nice and kind, funny.
Lovely. As B'nai Mitzvah, this is sort of a start of a journey of adulthood, meaning you're starting to make more decisions for yourself. And part of that is making a name for yourself and a reputation and how you carry yourself. And our hope and prayer for you, as you are already doing, is that you strive to carry yourself in all of these ways, as a good listener, someone who's hardworking, fun, kind, and that this be just the beginning of that journey. These are wonderful ones that you're all sharing. Thank you.
Part of the conversation that Rabbi Marder and I will have with you all when we meet, when we work on your Divrei Torah, when we focus on helping you prepare for becoming B'nai Mitzvah, is exactly that. And that, I think, is the hardest part for us to think about. We're focused on learning how to lead part of the service. We're focused on what we want our mitzvah project to be. We're focused on what we want to make sure that we're chanting Torah correctly with the correct trope, that we're pronouncing the Hebrew correctly. And we don't want you to forget the big picture, right? This idea of how you want to be remembered. And the last thing that I want to leave you with to think about, so also think about with your parents, is that while this is a milestone and life cycle event in your life, we can't forget that this is a Jewish milestone, right? That becoming B'nai Mitzvah, it's different than your Sweet 16. It's different than a Kinsera, right? That it's specific to what it means to reach this milestone as a Jewish adult, and what is specific and unique for you about your Jewish identity. That may be something that we're still figuring out, that you want to carry with you, and that will help shape you as you continue this journey towards adulthood. How will your Jewish identity guide you towards adulthood? It's an identity that sometimes we're not sure what it means, living in a world that is not Jewish, right? No matter what school we go to, no matter how we observe in our homes, that the Jewish community is a minority community in America. And so what does that mean? And how do we cultivate what Judaism means to us when it is unique to us and to our families, that each home and each family understands and appreciates it differently? In a world where so many around us may be doing things that are different than us and living a life differently than us. How do we make that name for ourselves and make sure that that name that we're making for ourselves is very much a Jewish name for ourselves as well? So we hope that if you haven't filled out this form, you'll print it out and really dig deep and focus on it. And if you haven't done your family brit, your family covenant, your homework from last time, you'll work on that as well.
And if anyone wants to get some more guidance on answering those questions or thinking anything through, especially, the Jewish piece and how we make a Jewish name for ourselves and manifest those values, how we make Torah study part of our lives, Shabbat, all of that, which we also hope is part of your journey, feel free to reach out to Rabbi O or to me, and we'd love to work on it with you when we meet or in addition to.
And Karen, we have one last workshop scheduled, yes? Or this is
the last.
This is the last one.
Yes.
That's what I thought. Okay. So then, with that in mind, one thing that when each of us, when you meet with us, one thing that we'll also work with you on is your mitzvah project. And I just want us to end with that idea that your mitzvah project is part of how you make a name for yourself in this world as well. Your mitzvah project is part of how you figure out who you are and what you want your relationship with this world to be. It's not like your Torah reading. Your Torah reading is something that you have to learn in order to be called to the Torah and chant from the Torah. It's not a box that you have to check off, something that you have to finish before that Shabbat. Ideally, your mitzvah project is, which Rabbi Marder and I will work with you on, trying to figure out what is meaningful to you, that it is an ongoing commitment to a cause or an organization that you find meaningful. In some ways, I have to say, that's one of the things that's hardest to do right now in this pandemic, because we really encourage volunteerism, and a lot of organizations, because of safety and healthness and health and well-being, it's especially hard to volunteer right now. But that's something that we'll also figure out together, about how to find a mitzvah project that is meaningful, that helps you make a name for yourself in this world.
Yeah. Hard, but not impossible. Students are definitely, and maybe you've already given some thought to a cause that you really care about or that you're interested in. But we invite you right now, if you haven't yet, to start thinking about that. Whether it's working with the Interfaith Food Pantry, perhaps, doing a drive, doing something to help an animal shelter. So think about an issue that you care about in our community, and give that a little bit of thought and do a little research. We invite you to do that, and then when we meet one-on-one, we'll talk it through much more and help to the best that we can. But this is an opportunity for you to, as Rabbi O said, to also to put yourself out there a little bit and think about a value that you have, a cause you care about, and that says a lot about your name and who you are.
All right.